Exciting news for 2025. Get ready for a brand new lineup of inspiring shows here on the Worship Team Training Podcast. Coming soon, we're launching fresh content and a new guest lineup designed to equip and encourage worship leaders and teams like never before. Plus, don't miss The Green Room, a new series of micro-podcast devotionals packed with quick, powerful encouragement for worship leaders. Stay tuned for 2025. It's going to be a great year of growth, inspiration, and transformation right here on the Worship Team Training Podcast. Now, let's get to today's episode. Hope you enjoy.
Because it's just, this is who you think you are supposed to be. But when the idea of being interim says, there's certain things that are permanent, meaning this is my spouse. That's not interim. That's for as long as, I live, my lifespan. But this role, being a worship leader, leading, has to be seen as something transitory. And the hope is, the dream would be, and it sounds like this is the theme for what others are saying today, that making something that will continue on beyond us is pretty important.
Hey, worship teams. Welcome to the Worship Team Training Podcast with Brandon Dempsey. Here are your hosts, Tony Guerrero, Shariah Bissonette, Rich Kirkpatrick, and Brandon Dempsey. Worship Team Training provides live workshops and online resources to help inspire, create, and transform the leading of worship. Let's jump into today's topic. Hope you enjoy.
It is 2025 as our first episode to the new season, so welcome. And we have our awesome, famous, favorite co-host. I want to start with Shariah Bissonette. Ladies go first. What's up, Shariah?
Hey, what's up? Good to be here.
And then Tony Guerrero. What's going on, Tony?
I almost didn't make it today because I was shaving and I nicked my upper lip and I have a bleeder, so it's all bandaged. I think the lighting is working in my favor, but it would not stop.
By all means, can you stop with the close-up already?
Pretty good bandage, actually.
It makes cheap entertainment. Rich, what is up, man? How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
All right.
Ready to roll.
Ready to roll. So here we go. Let's just go ahead and jump into it. So today it's about when stepping back feels like losing. Now, as worship leaders, we often pour everything into our ministries, right? But what happens when either we're told to take a step back, maybe not leading for the day, or maybe we feel like, we need a break, but sometimes taking that break could be just like it can seem like an epic failure in some sense, because it's like, well, I don't know anything else but to lead. So today we're going to be talking about that struggle of stepping away and the emotions that come with it, so that we can find purpose and process of what God is doing and how to build the better version of yourself as a worship leader. So if you ever felt like this before, you're not alone, and this conversation is right here for you. Before we jump in, I want to remind you to please hit the subscribe button if you're watching us by YouTube or anywhere else streaming, and definitely by audio. That would be Spotify or iTunes. And thanks again for being here with us today. So our first question, I'm going to shoot this out to Shariah first, as again, ladies first. So Shariah, you've worked with leaders in different seasons of ministry. And when someone is asked to take a step back, what are some of the most common emotions you feel people experience? And sometimes why does it feel so personal?
Well, there are a lot of emotions anyway in ministry, anyhow. And I would say there's a certain extent that if you're not taking it personal to some level at some time, even if it's a planned time to take it personal, it's really hard to divide all those things out. So before we even talk about potentially situations of being asked to sit down, or you feel like you need to sit down or whatever, I think I just want to encourage people in letting them know, there are really no rules, no rights or wrongs in the emotions that you feel. You got called to this really strange career contribution on the planet for a reason. And God knows what that reason is. I personally, I have joked with it through my 34 years of ministry. I've joked with it. I've said it's just like in The Godfather when they talk about the mafia. Every time you try to get out, it just draws you back in. And for whatever reason, we are continued to be called to this service-oriented use of our gifts and time. So, number one, I would just throw that out there. I would also say that probably, there's such a large amount of time that I spend in planning, and I plan for so many things, for even those times to protect myself and my people from any emotions, from anything. I think you can feel like a failure. You can feel like nobody cares about you. You can feel like you don't fit in. You're the only one who's looking at things differently. You can feel so many things. You can feel too old, too young, too skinny, too fat, too everything is the gambit of feelings. So taking time off or being asked to step down, those I would hope are choices that help in a person to recalibrate. I can only say I would do that for other people to plan for time. In fact, I'm doing the new calendar right now between now and Easter, and I see the people who have served continually. I also know everybody's story. So I try to protect the integrity of building that person emotionally so that there isn't really a whole lot of misunderstanding as to why potentially I would ask somebody to step down. So I guess the second part of that is if, you're the leader and you're doing that, I think it's important for us to determine what our wins are outside of our it's hard to measure wins. It's not like a football game where we can win or lose the game. And I think every worship leader, worship pastor needs to determine what their wins are, so that their tasks, their contributions, some of those things can be looked at as separate than actually their personal feelings or how they might be emotionally attached to their job.
Well said. And speaking of mafia, I think Tony's got a mafia face right here, so that works.
Well, especially today.
I know you got cut up.
I can't see it.
You must have done something like not favorable to the head honcho, Rich. And is this true for smaller churches of like that worship leaders often feel like maybe they can't take a break because no one else will step up? Have you seen this happen? And how does that pressure affect leaders over time?
Well, the pressure, of course, is dependent upon the pastor's expectations. And so that has to be. And I remember a friend who was at a smaller church who, if he didn't have two guitar players, he was threatened with being fired.
Wow.
And they were all volunteers, right? It wasn't like he could just say, hey, let me go through the list of who's the second, third, fifth call, whatever person that I can get on here. So it is not, that's an extreme, but I think you can back from that and realize that there are some expectations out there that are difficult to meet. And you have 52 weekends. So it's kind of 52 projects. So whether your face is there or you're physically there or not, usually if you're the hired person, you're in charge of those weekends that you are trying to withdraw and get yourself out too. So yes, it's very difficult. And if you don't have a staff like a larger church might, you don't have someone who could like take some of that for you. So yeah, it is a lot of pressure on worship leaders to even think about taking time off. I think it's easier to not take time off, perhaps, than face the wrath of an expectation that's unrealistic sometimes, or even just in normal, for healthy, normal situation, thinking it may not fly very good the week you're gone.
Yeah. So what happens when worship leaders tie themselves too close to their identity and being a worship leader?
I mean, that's a big question, actually, because
It for you.
The term worship leader is not even in the Bible, folks.
Right.
So what is your calling? Now,
Right.
I kind of think that being a musician's a calling, it's a vocation, because whether it's a hobby of mine or not, whether I get paid or not, the calling of being an artist is something that I just do all the time. I'm going to annoy my wife with piano playing or something, as a hobby if I'm not getting paid for it. So I do think worship leading is a little different than saying my, identity is being up front. I think it's really important. This has been said by many different people that every minister, including worship ministry people, we are interim. We don't own the seat. It's not who we are.
Right.
We are given a certain role over a period of time. And I think it helps us to then realize that whatever opportunity that we're in at the moment, we can give our best to that, realizing that it's going to have an end point. It's going to have an end point with, the church needing to go a different direction, or myself in a different direction, or just because a season comes where it's just not something I want to do anymore.
Yeah.
So that's going to happen. And I think if we take our identity, we separate the fact, what are we really called to? First of all, we're called to be, servants and followers of Christ. But I think in that, I think sometimes, to be honest, Brandon, that I've given up my calling to be a musician to try to fit into a worship leader role, because that's so much your identity that has kind of kept me back from being as gifted or skilled as maybe I might have become over the years, to try to fit in this little box that we call worship leader. So you can lead worship without being that face on the platform. So that's a whole nother part of it. So I don't know. So I think really we got to look at it not as our identity. 52 weekends is not who I am. It's the role that I help to serve this particular body of Christ at this particular time. And it's such a wonderful and difficult honor to do that.
You're listening to the Worship Team Training Podcast. Be sure to follow us on our socials: Facebook, Threads, YouTube, Blue Sky, Instagram, Substack, and X. Also, please click the subscribe button from where you're listening to this podcast and receive all the new shows and downloads when they drop. Thanks again for following and listening to the Worship Team Training Podcast. Now back to our episode.
Tony, when we step away, a lot of us have that struggle also of, will things go right, or will things change? And I remember when in leadership, when we think about things changing, you had a story that you shared with us a while ago, maybe like last season. So kind of take us back. What happens after you step away? I remember you were pushing for some kind of change. You met resistance, and then suddenly, after you left, the very thing that you're, trying to fight for. So tell us about that.
To address that real quickly, I mean, the fact is, most of the decisions that we as worship leaders or arts people in a church, most of the decisions that we need to get approval for, like we need to buy this equipment or we need this for the, whatever, usually those have to be approved by people who don't understand what we do or technical side of what we do. And so it takes a long time sometimes for them to see the importance of or come around. So, frankly, it's a win if it happens at all. It would be better for our egos if it happened when I said, let's do it. But ultimately, it's a slow moving process. I mean, maybe only second to government. I don't know. It's just, it's a big machine, getting, and really the bigger your church, sometimes the harder it is to make things happen. So, that's happened several times. It's kind of going on in my church right now. There's stuff that they're exploring that's like, wow, this is exciting. And it would have been exciting 2 years ago when we suggested it, But I want to address, like, when you first posed the question to Sharia, you said something about when you are asked to step back, and step back doesn't mean step down. Step back means like when you're asked to take a break, right?
Precisely.
And I'm thinking, gosh, do I ever know of a situation where a pastor said, hey, I want you to take time away, usually that has to come from you. If you have a pastor who's telling you, you need time off and then come back refreshed, like, man, thank God for that.
Right.
That's right.
It's a rare pastor to have, I know.
Yeah, but it is important. And I've said this before, like, I work in the secular world. I've been a musician since I was a teenager, a professional musician, working gigs and all that. And then I've worked in church for a lot of years. And the only burnout I've ever experienced is in church. I've never burnt out being a jazz musician or a musician in the field. But church work can burn you out. And in fact, most of the conversations I ever have about burnout are in the church and in ministry. I'm even just now trying to think, do I know any musicians who would say they're burnt out, you know?
Right.
And burnout's just not a word we hear as often out there as we do in ministry. So it is crucial. You should be demanding that time off. Like, the fact is, God demands that we take time off. God demands that we rest. And very few of us are willing to rest because of the fear of, what if I'm gone and they realize they don't need me? So you're asking the question, like, what if it doesn't go right? If it doesn't go well when you're not there, and you've been there for a while, you're not doing your job, because it should go really well when you're gone, because of all the people you've trained and all the practices you've put into place. If you are just like, I like the term seagull management, where you come in like a seagull at the beach and you just make a mess and fly off. If you're one of those people organizationally, of course it's going to fall apart when you're there. Nobody knows how anything works, but if you're organized, if you have processes in place, if you have people you've built up into leadership, your greatest joy, just like having children, should be to watch them excel when you are not there. Like, what a great thing, what a great testament to your ministry. But you need that time off because of burnout. And in 2009, CNN Money did a report on, I think it was the 10 most stressful jobs that pay low, that have low salary. And in that was, I expected to see like stockbroker or whatever it is. And in that was music minister. Out of those top 10 that CNN identified, music minister was in there. And that was shocking to me. I did not expect to see our role in a big, CNN Money report. But it's one of the top 10 least stressful jobs. And very telling also is that out of those 10, another one was senior pastor or, lead pastor. And that says an awful lot, where 2 of the top 10 jobs in all of the jobs in the world that are stressful and pay little are in the church. And if the church isn't addressing that, which we aren't, if the church isn't addressing that, we're missing one of the things that God calls us to do, which is rest. We talk about being made in his image and trying to be like Jesus. What's the first thing we know about God is that he was creative, right? Like, he created. But it's not long after that we see him resting. So why are we not the same importance on that? So.
Hey there, worship leaders, feeling stuck in a musical rut? Is your team struggling with unity or commitment? Let's talk about leveling up your worship team. Imagine a tailor-made workshop that comes right to your church, designed to revitalize your team's skills and spiritual formation. It's budget-friendly and could be the game changer you've been looking for. Go to www.worshipteamtraining.com/workshops. Get 20% off when you inquire today.
No, you did. You did just fine. Thanks for being our contestant today. See you on the next show.
A lot of blood draining from my body right now.
So. This is coming from, welcome to the new show, The Price is Wrong. And Tony, so Sharia, Tony brought up a lot of great points. There definitely is that trust that we need to have within our teams. And I just remember recalling conversations I'm having with the good folks over on our Facebook page on Worship Team Training. And, I kind of get this a little bit where people are asking, well, but I worry. That's why I can't break away. What are some practical ways that you can suggest that leaders can shift that to trusting in God's bigger plan?
Well, first of all, I'll do by my pre-run. I am still suffering a little PTSD from when Rich was talking about the pastor and the wrath of his expectations.
Oh, man.
I wrote that down, and I was triggered with all of the people who might be triggered. But just with the sense, guess what? You're going to have fear. You're going to have worry. You're going to have all of those things. And maybe a portion of that has to do with the expectations that are put on you that are unrealistic. You're trying very hard. I think it's probably been a small percentage, and I'm not saying that there aren't, but there's a small percentage of people that go into ministry to get something from it, to be, have your moment in the sun, to be your big whatever it is. I mean, I think there's a small percentage, but I just want to say there's a very large percentage of good-hearted people that just want to do well. They want to serve. They want to be good humans. They want to show God and love God and be a part of music and be a part of the administration, just good-hearted, trying people. I think the responsibilities of a Sunday morning presentation has just people continue to pile on, and it continues to be, big things, and it has to look like this, and it has to sound like this, and this has been an ongoing for a long time. And you are running, you are pacing, you're double dutch jump roping to try to make sure that all of those pieces are in place. And it's not like you're doing the same set every week. You're doing many little shows, many little concert-y type things as the world would see it. And you've got consumer culture and consumer leadership that want it to look a certain way and be a certain way. I am not surprised that people are worried, that they are stressed, that they are wondering how they can even let it go and let it be something else. And this is where I think that you have to be wise as a serpent and innocent as a dove. And I think that there are some practical business building type of thoughts. Always duplicate yourself out. Going back to what Tony had said, if you've been there a while and your training has not been effective enough that somebody else can come in, then that's going to be difficult. We have to always be our thought in our minds should always be in doubling ourselves out and getting the congregation used to that and getting everybody used to that. We have a unique situation that just happened at our church. I don't know if we talked about it, if we did before, but we inherited like a whole bunch of people. And with those people are brand new tastes of music. Many people from a really big mega church started coming over to our church. And with that, now we've got a blended family. So there's new training that has to happen. And sometimes it's not just A to B training, but it is weekly training to make sure that we are encompassing all of those things. And I know that sounds like just a ton, but if I were to be simple about it, I would say, plan always to build your people and to have your plan B. Always have your emergency. I have a red folder in my office, and this is if something happens to me that I'm, from tragic to just can't be there. These are the songs I know we can pull it off. These are the people that I know that are there that can do it, and this is the level that it's going to be at. And we rehearse the red folder, so I always have my emergency. But in that, to know that you're dealing with a lot, to give yourself grace. And just, that's the job. So instead of resisting that, plan for it, double yourself out, and have be in continuum rehearsing that replacement set at the very least.
Let me tag on to that by asking this question, if you don't mind. So like at my church, I've had somebody that basically could take over for me whenever I needed to go. And then she was pilfered by yet another church by a very dear friend.
So now we're going to bring that up, are we?
And now I have nobody. And so what do we do in that? I'm just kidding.
Her name would be Sharia.
Well, let me speak to that. Let me speak to that real quickly. Technically, we are still sharing this person, technically.
For the record, I told her, go. It would be great for you to be over there with Sharia, but I wouldn't. But she was my replacement. She was my replacement for sure.
And now you get to have someone else.
Nope.
Because you're such a good trainer.
No,
oh, wow. You're saying he duplicated himself.
He duplicated himself. Rich, I just want to thank you for what you said earlier. And I wrote the note down, and I'm repeating it because I think it's worthy of really taking a second round at it. And what you said about the importance of understanding that all of our positions are in the interim. I just think that is so powerful. Yeah, I belong to this business group of guys, and they're all really amazing business guys. And they all talk about operating, if they had to do it over again, they would build their large businesses, operating in a way that they had an exit strategy. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I think there's something really wise in that. even if your interim is 20 years, having the mindset, right? Having the mindset that I am always in the mode of preparing others, mentoring others, being with others, training others, improving the department for such a time as this. And I just wanted to add and really focus back on what you said. I thought that was really, really important for everybody and anybody, no matter where they're serving.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Rich,
Yes.
I had a question too for you. So, do you think, and it ties into what Sharia was saying last, do you find that it's hard for leaders to duplicate themselves because maybe they don't give themselves enough grace?
Enough grace, we meaning expectations, performance expectations?
Right, just
or
generally, like
work ethic. I experienced that one time when I actually had pastor and the other leader say to me that you can take a break if you'd like, and I didn't because it's just, this is who you think you are supposed to be. But when the idea of being interim says, there's certain things that are permanent, meaning this is my spouse, that's not interim. That's for as long as, I live, my lifespan. But this role, being a worship leader, leading, has to be seen as something transitory. And the hope is, the dream would be, and it sounds like this is a theme for what others are saying today, that making something that will continue on beyond us is pretty important. And that's pretty much what Christianity is about. It's about passing on our faith, right? So
yeah,
we need leadership to pass it on. And so I have to keep my mindset on my ministry verse, which I've had since I was in Bible school, 2 Timothy 2:2, where I need to entrust to others who've been entrusted. I need to entrust others who then will be trustworthy enough to entrust others with what they're being taught. So that's kind of a narrow group of folks that we can focus on, like the piano player who is Tony's red folder, basically going over to another person. But see, every time that we invest in the kingdom, whether it's for our own ministry, that energy has exponential results. Because if we build people who then will do the same thing, then you think of the numbers of what's going to happen. We focus so much on the immediate viral growth of something. And everyone who's a musician, which is probably most people listening to this, realize it doesn't start viral. How long does it take for, I had nieces who played violin, they did not sound good right away on the violin. It takes a long time just to sound good. Once piano, you can sound great by just getting some nice, tone, but you got to really learn just even to get that thing so your parents enjoy you practicing. It's not a viral thing then also in ministry leadership. We have to build it this way if we want it to last. And we might lose. I have a friend in Southern California there his ministry has produced so many people in his community that have been stolen. And he kind of feels a little sad for it because he misses the relationship, but he's also proud. And I'm glad he's proud of it. That's one thing I think we can be proud of, Brandon, and the rest of us here, is when we're actually able to send someone out or pass or give something away. And I also think that this is an artistic thing too. This is part of our artist calling, is to be able to pass a bit of our craft, so a bit of our fingerprint gets in there somewhere in someone else's DNA, and they do the same thing to somebody else. So I don't care whether you're officially a music teacher or not. If you're a musician, you're teaching and you're learning. And that's part of, I think, if we can hold that on as part of our role, it'll be a lot healthier for us. And then we won't feel resentful when we need to take the break or when we need to step out. So I think we can celebrate it, being interim and passing things on, or we can be afraid of it. And yeah, there are the triggering, sorry to trigger you, about last experiences. But
That's
you know,
nothing.
those are the thing that can keep us going is to see that we built into people.
Yep.
And I know it's kind of hard to say, but it's not. If we can just say no viral results are going to be from the things that give us the best results when it comes to ministry.
I just wanted to jump in very quickly because all of us are friends. And this is what I tell all our pastors when they're on the platform. So sometimes you guys make jokes, but nobody else is in on the inside story. So I'm just going to circle back and I'm going to say that Tony and I, because we're very close, we've been friends forever, we actually share in much of the same artistic community. And what I would encourage is other people to do that. It is not an us and them. It is not a we got spirit. Yes, we do. We got spirit and you don't. It's not anything like that. It would be best if artistic people of all levels of expertise, especially leaders, if they would join together and make a community that then they can share. You know, this person that we're talking about is very, very talented. I've met her. I've been mentoring her while she's been at Tony's church offline, and some of her skills. She moved up closer to my area. I didn't want there to be any misunderstanding for those who are not on the inside joke of this. The most important thing to understand is that when you surround yourself in a group of other people who are like-minded, who are thoughtful, who want to go after having the craft, I'm teaching on this, but taking a task to craft, making it so that it's important, making it so that everybody you're talking to that's in the same circles, it'd be okay for a drummer of mine to go over and hang out with Tony or all of those at any given point, at any given time. It's like we're neighbors, we have a family, they have a family, and on certain holidays, certain family members go there and then come here. And I think the point that I wanted to make in sort of an all around, joking way is the most important thing about that entire conversation is my friendship and my respect for Tony and for us being friends and workmates and thoughtful about serving God, that we actually get the opportunity to on occasion share somebody. And I think that that's important for anybody who's listening and anybody who is, in this beautiful and messy at times and challenging thing called ministry.
Did you know we've got a treasure trove of worship team training videos on YouTube? That's right, free resources at your fingertips. Get key insights on transforming your worship leadership today. Go to YouTube and search our name at Worship Team Training. Elevate your worship experience now.
Well, I hope that all holds up in court for you when you receive my lawsuit.
Well, I was going to say now, Tony, I mean, as we wrap up this therapy session, what do you have to say to Sharia? Did you hear her? I mean, how does that make you feel?
First of all, I love that I put her on the defense, but the truth is, I'm so in
Not
line.
for me. It's for everybody listening. Not for me.
I'm so in line with what Sharia is saying, and that's another part about training people up. If whenever you're training somebody up who's for the lack of a better term, who's beneath you, and you're training them up to be able to replace you, they're either going to replace you or they're going to move on to a place where they can now express those gifts, because you become the ceiling. Like, you're raising them up, but as long as they're with you, they're never going to get beyond you. The truth, the person we're talking about, she's an incredible piano player. She's so good, but I play piano. So she's over there playing pads and holding 2 notes at a time. What a waste of her skill, And she's great at all these other things. She does charts, she sings, she does all these great things. Of course, she should go now to a place where, because as long as I'm there, I don't want to relegate myself to playing pads if I play piano, And so, she absolutely should go there. And when she told me, I mean, of course, I'm going to be sad to not see her every week, but I told her right away, like, absolutely go. Like, that's so much better for you. And that's goes back to what Rich was saying. Like, this is all sort of transitory,
Yeah.
Raise people up, they move on. We have moved on. I wasn't at this church 6 years ago. I'm there, and someday maybe I won't be. And, that's true for all of us. And that's just the way that is the way ministry works. It's the way a lot of life works. And back to your question, like when we hold on too tightly to that as our identity, and you're just setting yourself up for stress and disappointment and a sense of failure and worry and all of those things. But if we look at it as just these little chapters in our life, that this amazing life God has given us and this calling He's given us, what a beautiful thing. Who wants to read a book with one chapter in it?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Right.
I want to read about, when I go back over my life, I want to think about all these different chapters. Thank God I'm not at my first church that was, however many years ago. Like, think of all the great people and great relationships and great things that have happened because I'm no longer there, and now I'm here, and now I'm not there anymore, and now I'm here. Yeah, I want a lot of chapters, And so I love, so just to clear that up, I love that Sarah is, I do.
I'm glad you feel that way because I'm stealing your drummer in 2 weeks.
Oh, my lawsuit just got bigger.
I love it. I love it.
Oh man.
Just kidding, by the way. Just kidding, by the way.
I share what you're talking about, Tony, when we can look at a starting point of how God formed us first in ministry, and to see the journey of how far we came. And that's only through the help of great men and women who have been there for us. And as I took a recent trip to California out near you guys to do a workshop out there, and
You could have let us know.
Well, I did, but you guys are busy. You had to go. You had to do studio time with John Tesh. So there it is. But we'll do it next time, as we said. But I called Rich, and we're just talking, and it just reminded me of the many times guys like Monty, Stan, Buddy, all those people, great people, have poured into all of us. And it's amazing how we can carry that on, because it's not about us for ourselves. It's to give out to the people that we're leading now, to carry that kind of legacy, if you will, of teaching, right? And shaping. And I shared that with the worship team that I work with. And big shout out to Izzy Gregorio, who's a worship leader at Rock Valley Christian Church in Marietta. Awesome dude. This guy has been a volunteer, not paid, volunteer worship leader for 10 years. Grew his team from about, 5 people to like maybe 40, 50 plus. And out of that, he has like 5 or 6 strong worship leaders that are near his age. And he also, what was very cool is that he's incorporated the younger generations that I'm talking like our son's age. They were like 11, 14 and 15, 16, playing drums, playing bass. And they sounded just as good as any able adult that I've heard. And I thought, wow, this is a guy who's not afraid. This is a guy who is able to duplicate, reproduce himself into these younger leaders. And so when we think about stepping away, because that's what our show's about also, is about the purpose of finding rest. I'm kind of segueing here that by stopping, that sometimes for the leader, it feels like, well, I don't want to stop this momentum. But Tony, what if it's actually preparation?
Preparation for what? What do you mean?
Well, what if when we think about rest as it's not just stopping, but what about if it's the Holy Spirit and God preparing us for something that is to come?
Oh,
in our ministries. That's what I mean.
I kind of feel like every single day, everything in our life is preparation for what's next. And that's why we have to make sure some of those things are good things, and rest is a good thing. So having rest in your life, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody, but having rest in your life absolutely prepares you to either do better at what you're already doing, or maybe have new perspective on someplace new that you're going. Really only good things can come from rest. I think that's part of why God made that example for us, I've always thought it was kind of amazing that this God that we think of as all powerful still needed rest, and saw that as important. Like what a crazy thing. Like this God that we can ascribe the most unbelievable or inexplainable mysteries and miracles, and can do anything that we can imagine, like, and beyond what we can imagine, still needed to rest. Like what should that say to us who are far less capable than God, and that's very clearly pointed out in Scripture, So it is preparation. I don't think it's a what if question. It is preparation. Rest is preparation.
Mm-hmm. And it goes back to what Rich was saying about being in the interim, because in the interim, there are points that you do find rest because you're not the only one. You shouldn't be the only one doing all things. So let's wrap up. Sharia, Rich, can you give us some practical things that worship leaders can do to have rest, stay spiritually and emotionally healthy?
Well, Rich, you go first.
Okay. One of the things I would say is if you know baseball, you need to create a farm system. And so I actually wrote a little white paper on this, but the concept basically is, are there venues in your church you're creating so someone can, for the first time, run sound, for the first time play bass in a band, for the first time can do that? So I think there's some practical things you could do by just identifying some kind of path, just like you don't play the major leagues instantly, but given it's not viral growth, right? You have to start somewhere. So are you able to find and strategize so that you can get the 14 and 15, 16-year-olds who've had lessons already probably on playing on the right teams? So start a farm system.
Great. Awesome.
My practical would be, no matter if your church is huge, small, anywhere in between, whatever that is, always make room to stop everything and do what's really important. And that's to pray and to be in the Word. I think what happens is a lot of times things get so crazy. We are talked to, we are barked at, we are asked to do stuff, we are doing our own plan, we're doing everything. And the discipline of stopping all of that and becoming calm and putting the emphasis on God's Word and prayer, no matter when it happens, even if you stop in the middle of a rehearsal, I think the discipline of that will bring to you a type of listening and a type of relationship with God that will help you in a multitude of different scenarios.
Tony, final word.
Well, here's a practical thing. There's a lot of things we could talk about. This one pops to mind, that we are creative people. We need creative outlet. Very often ministry is not nearly as creative as it could be, or I want to say should be, but very often much of our creativity is stifled. So in that sense, you need a life outside of your ministry, a creative life. Like you need to be writing songs for your own purposes. You need to be playing with musicians who aren't just in your church, and like you just need to be doing things that are creative, or doing things that are creative outside of music, or whatever it is. You have to have something else that fuels you, because church, like I said about that whole thing, I only experienced burnout in the church. Like church will burn you out. It's burned out almost everybody I know in ministry, at some point or other. And so you need to have creative outlets, and that's different from the other outlets like family life and, other hobbies or whatever, but you need to have outlets that are not stifled by the church, because church ministry can be, and very often is, stifling, and that's the role we accept, but don't let it define you in that way.
Awesome. I love hearing from each of you. Yeah, just this was a lot of good stuff, right, Sharia?
Good.
Such a powerful conversation we've had. And what a great way to kick off the new season with our first episode. And I just want to leave our viewers and listeners with this thought, that worship leaders, reframe stepping back as an opportunity rather than it being punitive, but being purposeful. And so we bring this content to you because whether if you're taking a break on your own or been asked to step back, whichever, your leadership still matters. And even when you're not leading, I think especially when you're not leading, right? Because it's your influence that still speaks, even when you're silent. And your worship is still just as powerful, even if you're in the back row, even on days that you're not leading worship. So we just want to thank you guys for being here with us. And we encourage you to find ways to develop, to be in that interim, to take break, to rest, to take a step back, because we're in it for the long haul. And Tony said it best that, this is one big, I think, or a few guardrails that we have to keep ourselves healthy and to stay in the right lane. So just want to remember this thought also. I say this at every show, that it's not about being perfect. It's about the Lord Jesus leading you. And I really mean that he leads us both in life and in worship. And that's true. So thank you guys for being here. Rich, Tony, Sharia, you guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And speaking of punitive, Sharia, you'll be hearing from Mike.
While we were talking, I filed a restraining order against you, so you will not be adjourned.
That's awesome. All right, guys. Hey, we'll see you back here next time on the Worship Team Training Podcast. Thanks for joining us. See you then. Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. Will you help us spread the word by giving us a high rating and dropping a comment to share the love? This recording is a Worship Team Training registered trademark and digital broadcast, all rights reserved, copyright 2025. Please subscribe to Worship Team Training. See you again on the next one.
Hey, worship leaders and teams, thanks for listening through all the way to the end of this podcast where most people don't. So I have a special request to ask you. Will you help us get the word out to bump up our algorithm for more worship leaders and teams to see and hear these messages that will help them in their ministry growth? So if you enjoy this content, please like and follow this page on whatever social platforms you find us. Or if you're listening to this podcast by whatever podcast service and or watching this by YouTube, please click the subscribe button. And thank you.